Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Icarus, and I thought today would be a good day to kind of go over one of my symptoms of bipolar disorder, which is delusional thinking. This is coming up partially because just I had my talk consult today, and I had mentioned last week I'd canceled it after some bad stuff, and on, and it ties very heavily into a delusion that I recognize I have. I just cannot stop thinking that it's true for some reason. It's very difficult to break, especially when it feels like reality is confirming my delusion. So, what is a delusion? It is a false belief that someone very firmly holds to be true, even with all evidence to the contrary. And it can be something pretty mundane, like being convinced that you smell bad, even though everyone else says you're fine, to something absolutely insane, like honestly, any of the QAnon shit. If you genuinely believe the QAnon shit, you are either horribly misinformed or you are actively delusional. I can't see a way around it. So, there is a recognized mental illness that is called delusional disorder, I believe, and it's considered a form of psychosis. But delusional thinking can also be a symptom of other mental illnesses, schizophrenia being one, bipolar disorder actually being another. Uh, Anything paranoia, that sort of thing. So, we believe that my delusions are probably a manifestation of my anxiety and my bipolar disorder, because my specific delusion that I consistently have is the idea that unrelated events are actually tied together and can influence each other. And usually this is in a downward spiral. So, say most recently, we lost a house, the chance to put an offer in on a house that we really liked. And the next day, the day after we found out that this happened, I was supposed to have a top consult. I've had a bad history with top consults in the back due to my weight, and so because we had gotten such horrible news, I couldn't shake the feeling that I would then receive horrible news in the top consult. And thus, I didn't fully cancel it, I rescheduled it. Because despite the fact that I had this very well ingrained thought that because of X, Y is going to happen, I've also am battling body dysphoria and gender dysphoria, so the need to have my tits removed actually overcame my fear of, not of the cycle continuing. It's like I might as well get my heart broken again instead of just not having it. So I did reschedule, and it happened to fall after our home inspection yesterday. And the home inspection was very much a mixed bag, so my delusional thinking was like, okay, it's going to be a mixed bag of a consult. And lo and behold, it's a mixed bag. There's a lot of positive things, but there's also a lot of negative things. And while the logical side of my brain is like, no, it clearly, you are just conflating these two events together, the rest of me is like, nope, this is proof. This is proof right here that whatever happens to you is going to continue to happen to you. And this can lead for me into a lot of very negative things, like money issues. I get really anxious and things have to be solved immediately, or I'm going to start down the spiral, because for me, my line of thinking is literally a circle that keeps going down. So I'll start up here, and then I'll start thinking about how things are going badly, circle around to the original thing, but my thoughts slowly get darker and darker and darker, and it happens more and more quickly. So it's very much like water going down a drain. Um, Speaking more generally about delusions, that in bipolar disorder, there is like two different ways to classify it, where it is congruent with the mood that you're currently having, meaning that it's connected, the thoughts are connected to your mood, or the thoughts are very antithetical to your mood, or mood incongruent symptoms. So it could be like if you're in a depressive episode and you're having very sort of manic thoughts and manic delusions, that's incongruent. But if you are manic and you're having the same manic delusions, like maybe you're having feelings of grandeur, then yeah, they are congruent. And with bipolar in particular, you actually, it's more common for the delusions to happen when you are manic than depressive, though they can obviously manifest when you're depressed as well. Uh, Delusions can also like actually alter the way that you see and interact with the world through your senses. So when I was a kid, a really big delusion I had that was kind of hammered into me through my family was the delusion of I was smelly. And no one else would notice it if I asked about it. No one said anything about it. I don't even have a good sense of smell. But because it was hammered into me over and over and over again that I was a smelly person and nothing was fixing it, no matter how much I bathed or what deodorant I wore, I could smell myself and I thought I smelled bad. So, like I said, it's a type of psychosis. It's not psychosis as an illness in and of itself. It's just kind of like usually classified in with other mental disorders. Though, like I said, there is actually a delusional disorder as well. And I wanted to pull up some of the types of delusions, and then we can talk about how a person can experience delusional thinking even if they aren't necessarily have a mental disorder, or because I do believe, like I mentioned with the QAnon quip, that you can have delusional thinking and it can be find roots in other things. So the first one that's listed is delusions of grandeur. Like I just said, this is believing that you're a very important person, you're famous, you're publicly important, or if you go into the more impossible delusions, you are actually a god. Uh, TV shows like to play around with this a lot. Like I remember some Law and Order SVU episodes when I used to binge watch that. There was at least one or two episodes that kept cropping up over and over again where this person believed that they were a messenger of God. So all the stuff that they were doing because God told them to. There is delusional jealousy, where you believe that your spouse or significant other is being unfaithful, being the most common one. And so you do see that a lot. I hate to say this, but I feel like it's almost a stereotype of cishet relationships, and this delusion can actually sprout from reality, where if someone has been cheated on many, many times, they start getting paranoid that their current spouse is going to cheat on them, and it can lead to very dysfunctional relationships. But it can also come apropos of nowhere and still fuck people up if they are not recognizing that this is delusional thinking and trying to work through it. Somatic delusions. This is believing that you have certain medical conditions or physical defect. Hypochondria is pretty common, as well as the sort of hypochondria where you believe your child has mental illness, not mental, but physical illnesses, that sort of thing. there's a very popular true crime story. I have issues with true crime. We can get into that in another day. But of a girl who ended up, she and her boyfriend killed her mother. So, because her mother was constantly saying that she, you know, was ill, was giving her medications, would switch from doctor to doctor, that sort of thing. And I know her name, I'm just not saying it because it's actually a slur against Romani people. You run into that a lot. One of my favorite movies has that same slur, and it's supposed to be named after a World War II weapon, and it's just like, Del Toro, why? This was such a perfect movie. Why did you ruin Pacific Rim in this one specific way that I cannot call it that? Instead, I call it Lady Danger because that was a very popular. This is completely off topic. Okay, delusions of reference, thinking that random events contain a special meaning for you alone. I believe this is pretty close to what I have, where I think events are correlated and they mean bad things are going to happen, or more rarely good things. So, and this is a huge thing I've had because, like, 2020, COVID shutting down schools, it set off this really big drain, and I'm trying very hard to get out of it. But it's so difficult, especially when reality correlates to my delusion. And it's like, why did you have to do that? Either break my heart or make it go really, really well. Don't give me a mixed bag after I've had a mixed bag. And then bizarre delusions, which is believing in things that are impossible, like you actually believe that you're a werewolf, or someone is an octopus, or there's giant worms in subway tunnels, like the worms made it, or reptile people are in charge of everything. So there's different ways you can treat this: cognitive based therapy or medication, that sort of thing. It really depends on the individual. But I want to talk a bit about how delusions and delusional thinking can happen even outside of a medical diagnosis. And I am going to talk about QAnon and Trump supporters, and generally how a lot of racist stereotypes and that sort of thing, and even fear from that TERFs genuinely feel about trans women, because it's not just hatred, it's genuine fear, can all lead into delusional thinking. And for the most part, with all of this, is just a combination of fear and misinformation. So you have someone like, give me your bog standard Alabama cis white male. And he was raised in a culture where he didn't inherently, he wasn't explicitly taught these things about. Here goes my cat. Thank you, Dory. So you take a cis white male from Alabama. He was raised in a culture where things that they weren't explicitly told to him about black people being inferior or being more scary, that sort of thing, but they're kind of set up by the culture and the world surrounding him. He doesn't have a lot of access to black culture because there's not a lot of black people around him. They usually get segregated to their own thing. And if he grew up in a place like I did in Lake Town, it's even easier to be disconnected because there were specific areas in the city that were more urban, which is hilarious because we're talking about a town that had like 10,000 people during non-vacation months. And the school itself had a very, very high white concentration of people with very few black, Hispanic, other Asian cultures. Like there was maybe one or two people who were distinctly East Asian. We had no Indian people. No, we had one Indian person in the entire school. And the black population, everyone in there were very geared towards white culture. So when black people talk about code switching at school, the black kids and the Latino kids were very much code switch. They code switched to white to be white because it was a very white school. So you're not getting a lot of exposure to that, and you aren't getting a lot of exposure to different types of education. This can lead to the misinformation that you get from Fox News and the like, because they grew up believing that this was a trusted resource. They continue to treat it as a trusted resource. They are scared of other thought processes and looking to other news. They get kind of put into an echo chamber, which does lead to them being racist and having delusional thoughts that black people are trying to take over the world, the white race is being genocided, etc., etc. I'm not saying this is good. I'm not excusing their behavior, and I do think it is on the individual to try and research and learn about the world outside their bubble. That's very much something that I have to do, and I'm continuing to do so. I think this daily video log is a great way to show my growth as a person, even within a few months. But I do think that there is some explanation behind why these people have delusional thinking, and a lot of it is through misinformation. And when I recognize my own delusional thinking, but I can't break the thought process, it's still there, even though logically I know it's not real. I can sort of see why it can be so hard for people who have been inundated in this shit to find it extremely difficult to break their line of thinking. And again, I'm not excusing the behavior. I'm hopefully just sort of explaining why it's so easy for them to shut out the truth and shut down any explanations otherwise, especially because the easiest way to continue this delusional thinking in their audiences, like Fox News, is to show only the most hyperbolic, angry reactions. And a lot of people online will also run into these over-the-top reactions because people on the leftist side, on the trying to educate people side, get so used to bad faith arguments that when we see one, we don't just turn away, we don't just shut down the conversation, we will steadily grow angrier or even come right out of the gate with vitriol. And so that just reinforces in their mind, well, this is what it is. I don't have an easy solution to it because I do believe, again, that is on the individual to try and work through their delusions. And these people don't want to, don't even realize that they're having this delusional thinking. And I feel like even on the left side, there's still equally the amount of problem. But it is interesting for me to think about because, like I said, I recognize I have delusional thinking and paranoia and all this shit going on in my brain, and I've been working on it actively since 2016. But it's still hard for me to push through it. So, I don't know. It was just an interesting thought I had today. This thought really goes nowhere. But maybe y'all found it interesting too. I don't know. Tell me about your delusional thinking, if you have any that you recognize, or if you guys have thoughts about what would be a great way to try and counteract some of the delusional thinking that you run across. Whether you're someone who doesn't want to deal with the effort that it takes to try and genuinely educate people, that's totally fine. But for the people that do like reaching out and do like trying to argue with it, what do you think? Any thoughts about what we can do to try and combat these thought processes, or should we just keep doing what we're doing and consider anyone who lashes out as sort of a lost cause? Well, that's all I've got for today. Yeah, let me know what you think. And y'all stay safe, stay hydrated, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.